In a small Welsh town, a single moment of violence outside a pub had consequences that would ripple through an entire community. A night that should have been forgotten descended into a nightmare, tearing a family apart and leaving a deep scar on the town of Abergele. This is a story about how a simple argument, fueled by alcohol, spiraled into a senseless tragedy. It's about a life cut short and the difficult search for justice that followed. This is the story of Sam Blackledge. Paul Blackledge, who everyone knew as Sam, was a fixture in Abergele, a small market town on the north coast of Wales. At 54, he was a widower and a father of two, and people who knew him said he was popular, likable, and good-natured. He was a real character and a regular at his local pub, the Pen y Bont Inn, known for just being a friendly guy. Like a lot of people in a town that tight-knit, Sam's life was part of the fabric of Abergele. He had his friends, his family, and his routines. But on the night of July 25th, 2013, that all came to a violent end. In just a few minutes, a disagreement over a drink would lead to an assault, a cover-up, and a man losing his life. Abergele is the kind of town where it feels like everyone knows everyone. Its old streets and local shops create a real sense of community, and the pub often feels like the town's living room. The Pen y Bont Inn on Bridge Street was exactly that, a place for friends to meet up for a pint and a chat. For Sam Blackledge, it was like a second home. On that Thursday night in July, Sam was doing what he often did, enjoying a few drinks at the pub. He was a familiar face, and by all accounts, the evening started out just like any other. The pub was managed by 47-year-old Tracy Jones. Her partner, Anthony Smith, a 40-year-old former bouncer, didn't officially work there, but had sort of appointed himself as the pub's unofficial muscle, dealing with anyone he thought was causing trouble. He even admitted he was the one who would throw his weight around. For a while, everything was fine. Smith and Sam Blackledge had even been friendly before that night. But as the evening went on, the mood shifted. Sam, who'd already had several pints and was clearly intoxicated, asked for another drink. Smith decided Sam had had enough and refused to serve him. When Sam asked again, the friendly vibe was gone. What should have been a simple "let's get you a taxi" or a quiet word with a friend to take him home turned into something brutal and fatal. The two people who should have been looking out for their customers, the manager and her partner, were about to become his attackers. The argument at the bar didn't stay there. It spilled outside, and things got violent, fast. Anthony Smith, taking on his self-appointed role as doorman, decided to throw Sam out. This wasn't a gentle escort to the door. Witnesses said it was shockingly aggressive. As Smith forced Sam out, he reportedly banged his head against the wall on the way. Once they were outside, the violence didn't stop. It got worse. Smith threw Sam to the ground and started punching him. At this point, the pub manager, Tracy Jones, made a choice that would change everything. Instead of stepping in to stop the attack, she joined in. She came outside and started punching and slapping Sam while he was lying on the ground, completely vulnerable. The judge in the trial later said that if Jones had just stayed inside, the whole tragedy might have been avoided. Her actions seemed to just pour fuel on the fire. Seeing his partner get involved, Smith unleashed what was later described in court as a final, ferocious punch. The prosecutor called the force completely over the top, and the judge said it was rare for a court to hear of a punch with that much ferocity. Teenagers who saw it happen said the punch was so powerful it looked like it lifted Sam off his feet before he crashed back down onto the ground. The whole thing was described as 5 minutes of violence against a man who at that moment was harmless. Sam Blackledge, drunk and smaller than his attacker, was in no state to defend himself. The attack left him with multiple facial fractures and devastating internal head injuries. A man had gone to his local for a quiet drink and was now lying mortally wounded on the pavement. Right after the attack, Tracy Jones and Anthony Smith weren't thinking about getting help for the man they'd just beaten. They were thinking about covering their tracks. They went up to the young men who had witnessed that final brutal punch and told them to lie. They were supposed to tell anyone who asked that Sam Blackledge wasn't attacked. He just fell over. This calculated lie would later get them charged with perverting the course of justice. In all the confusion, Sam's friends, probably not realizing how badly he was hurt, helped him get back to his nearby flat. Sam himself, his mind clouded by alcohol and a severe brain injury, had no idea he was dying. It wasn't until his daughter Georgia showed up at his flat that the reality of the situation hit. She found her father in a terrible state and immediately called for paramedics. Sam was rushed to the hospital and then transferred to a specialist head injury unit at the University Hospital of North Staffordshire. For 2 agonizing days, he clung to life while doctors did everything they could. His family raced to his side, just hoping for a miracle, but the damage was too great. The subdural hemorrhage from the violent blow was irreversible. On July 27, 2013, 2 days after walking into his local pub, Sam Blackledge died. The judge would later talk about the family's pain during those last hours, a pain that would remain with them forever. With Sam's death, an assault investigation turned into a murder inquiry. North Wales police started putting together what happened that night. While Smith and Jones had tried to spin a story about an accidental fall, their lies fell apart pretty quickly. The police praised the moral courage of the young witnesses who came forward to tell the truth about what they'd seen. Their testimony was key to exposing the cover-up and the brutal reality of the attack. Anthony Smith and Tracy Jones were arrested. At first, they were charged with manslaughter, but as more evidence came to light, the charges were upgraded. Smith was charged with murder, and Jones with manslaughter and perverting the course of justice. They both pleaded not guilty to the most serious charges, although Smith did admit to manslaughter, claiming he never meant to kill Sam. The case went to Crown Court, where the jury heard all the harrowing details. The prosecution argued this was a case of gratuitous violence, painting Smith as a bully who used force that was far beyond reasonable. They presented the witness testimony about that ferocious punch lifting Sam off the ground, a detail that pointed to an intent to cause serious harm. The court also heard about Smith's past convictions for violence, which an appeal court later agreed was relevant to show his intent that night. Smith's defense argued it was a single punch, and that he and Sam had gotten along before that night, suggesting it wasn't premeditated. Tracy Jones's defense claimed she hadn't seriously hurt Sam, that she liked him and was a hard-working mother who was deeply saddened by what happened. But the prosecution shot back that as the pub's manager, Jones had a duty of care. The judge agreed, saying she should have known better, and that her actions helped escalate the violence to its fatal conclusion. The search for justice for victims and their families is a huge part of the stories we tell here. These investigations and trials are often the only way to get any kind of accountability. If you think these stories are important and want to support our deep dives into the justice system, please take a second to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us continue to bring these complex cases to light. After hearing all the evidence, the jury came back with its verdicts. Anthony Smith was found guilty of murdering Sam Blackledge. Tracy Jones was found guilty of manslaughter. and also convicted of perverting the course of justice for trying to cover it up. The public gallery was packed when the sentences were read. The judge, Merfyn Hughes QC, spoke directly to Smith, pointing out his history of being a bully. He sentenced Anthony Smith to life in prison, with a minimum of 16 years before he could even be considered for parole. The judge accepted Smith might not have intended to kill Sam, but said he clearly intended to cause serious harm, which is all that's needed for a murder conviction. In 2015, Smith tried to appeal, arguing the jury was prejudiced by hearing about his past offenses. The appeal was thrown out, and both the conviction and the 16-year minimum sentence were upheld as not excessive. For Tracy Jones, the judge acknowledged she played a smaller role, but still condemned her for failing in her duty as the pub manager. She was sentenced to 2.5 years for manslaughter, plus another 9 months for perverting the course of justice, making her total sentence 3 years and 3 months. Outside the courthouse, a detective read a statement from Sam's family. They thanked the police, the prosecution, and victim support services. The statement said, "The verdict will not bring Paul back but should give our family a sense of justice. We hope from this other people will realize the devastating consequences of their violent behavior, so that other families don't have to experience what we are living through now." They remembered Sam as a friendly, good-natured man who was deeply missed. A guilty verdict can bring legal justice, but it can never bring a person back or heal the wounds left behind. The murder of Sam Blackledge completely shattered his family. In a victim impact statement read in court, Sam's sister, Rosalind, described the devastation. She said Sam's stepson, David, was finding it hard to keep going and would often be found in floods of tears. The statement explained how Sam's eldest daughter, Jessica, felt a deep sorrow and was struggling with loss of appetite and sleep. The thought of going to the trial and reliving it all made her feel physically sick. His other daughter, Georgia, the one who found him and called for help, was just as traumatized, physically, emotionally, and socially. The whole experience had wrecked her concentration at college and left her struggling to cope. Rosalind's words captured the endless heartbreak. She described her brother as a popular and likable man whose murder had left a void which can't be filled. She ended with a thought that every family torn apart by violence knows all too well. To think that we will never see him or hear his voice again is heartbreaking. The murder also sent a shockwave through Abergele. The local pub, a place that should feel safe and familiar, became the scene of a brutal killing by its own staff. It was a betrayal of trust and a grim reminder of how fast violence can erupt. The case is a stark example of the so-called one-punch attacks that are tragically common, often fueled by alcohol. Across the UK, there are too many stories like Sam's lives ended in a split second by a single blow. In one recent 5-year period, 82 deaths were recorded from one-punch attacks in the UK, a horrifying number that doesn't even count the people left with life-changing brain injuries. The story of Sam Blackledge is a tragic lesson in the destructive power of a single moment of rage. A man's life was taken not because of some big feud or major crime, but because he was refused a drink in his local pub. It shows how alcohol, aggression, and a complete failure of responsibility can combine to create the worst possible outcome. Anthony Smith's 5 minutes of violence cost Sam Blackledge his life and earned Smith a life sentence. Tracy Jones's choice to join in and then lie ruined her own life and destroyed her community's trust. But the biggest price was paid by Sam and his family, who lost a father, a brother, a stepson, and a friend. Their loss is permanent, a wound that time might soften but will never truly heal. This case is a somber warning. It asks us to think about the real consequences of violence and to remember that behind every headline is a human being and a family left to pick up the pieces. The hope Sam's family expressed, that their story might make someone else think twice before choosing violence, is the only good that can possibly come from such a senseless loss. Paul Sam Blackledge is remembered not for how he died, but for the friendly, good-natured man he was, whose absence is still deeply felt.